From the Fox Studios in downtown Panama City, it's News View with Lee Sullivan.
Let's talk about your endangered freedoms. News and views with an attitude. Good evening. It's News View. I'm Lee Sullivan. Thank you for allowing me and have the opportunity to visit once again with Ron Hart, syndicated columnist, libertarian, humorist, and most importantly, Fox News View analyst and contributor, and author, if I may. No such thing as a pretty good alligator wrestler. Let me recommend it if you are looking for it. Besides paying me a lot of money and having me get you one, you can go to Ron Hart or ronaldhart.com and you can tune one up. Number one. Number two, welcome back, Cotter.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Rosemary Beach still intact?
Down there for MLK, celebrating diversity.
Absolutely.
Down there, yeah. I understand there's one Lutheran down there. So, yeah.
How did that happen?
We're still looking into it.
How did that happen?
Yes.
Oh, listen, we got a lot to talk about. First note, let me talk with you a little bit about the book. Kids, Politics, and Family, Why Daddy Drinks. You enjoy doing that?
It was fun. I just summarized columns I'd done in the past on major subjects, kids, politics, and family, and tried to divide it into 3 sections, so for handy reference. And I put them in chapter form, which I thought was really unusual, so people could go. So as Matt Ryan, the quarterback of the Falcons, said in his blurb, that I've now officially written more books than I've read. So I got that going for me.
It's good to have people out there for you, isn't it?
It's terrific to have people backing you.
A lot for you and I to talk about, and I think, speaking of diversity, let's start with Janet Napolitano. We've done a great job.
Yeah, she's terrific. That's what you want in charge of national security. A politically correct woman and dresses like a small-town lesbian. She's not my type of person. I mean, I want some grizzled ex-police chief with a nervous tick with a questionable past to be in charge. I would love to have you there. I'd rather shoot and ask questions later when it comes to national security. But she's afraid to use the word terrorist. She's afraid, it's not even a war on terror anymore. It's a man-made disaster. Is that what it is right now?
Right.
Man-made disaster, this thing over there. So not my type of person. I like the idea, or I did like the idea, of Cheney being there. Here's a guy willing to shoot a hunting buddy.
And a lawyer.
And a lawyer, which is a double good. And he also has that faraway look in his eye, like he's reliving a waterboarding in his mind all the time. You know, he has that little, and those are the people that terrorists respect. I'm a big fan of, I'm not a neocon, so don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of bringing the troops home from Afghanistan.
Right.
I'm a big fan of not being in Iraq. As a libertarian, you only act when your interests are directly threatened. So I'm not a big war person. I am a big fan of protecting our borders. And that seems like if we get hurt, that's what it's going to be about. Our borders not being protected. In this case, a fella able to get on a plane, paid cash for the ticket, no luggage, no overcoat going to Detroit. One-way ticket. I mean, all the signs were there. He was on the watch list. His dad had already put him on notice with the State Department. And the real winner was Hillary Clinton in this whole situation. So if there's a woman who knows something about a man's undershorts perhaps going off at any moment, inopportune times, it's Hillary Clinton. So she was all over this one. So she came out pretty good. The guy wasn't that bad.
Well, the guy, clearly he wanted to die, because, I mean, a guy wouldn't do that to himself unless he was wanting to go on, the rest of him go.
Well, here's his thing. He wasn't very bright. He said he wanted to start out in Al-Qaeda as a suicide bomber and work his way up in the organization. That was his whole idea. So it didn't work out too well for him on his career options. But, the poor guy, I mean, you're sitting there, and it wasn't the U.S. government that protected us. It was citizens back there. The guy's fumbling around. I think a male flight attendant went by, saw him doing it, thought he'd, fumbling with his underpants, thought he'd found Mr. Right for a second. So they jump him and, they wrestle with him and they drag him up to first class, which is kind of what it takes to get upgraded these days on Delta. That's kind of how it works out. Yeah, that's what it takes to get first class on Delta these days. But anyway, so it's a good tribute to the American people being vigilant, keeping an eye out for things, and not our government. I mean, how much more do you need on a person not to be on the fly list? Of course, the people going to Detroit are they're rolling the dice anyway.
Well, I mean, there in Chicago, but when we talk about that, and her euphemism that it worked, and then Barack's euphemism that there were problems. The question, as you suggest, is who poses the greatest risk for us? The previous president, Bush, or the current president, Obama?
I think they both have to inherit the same CIA, the same TSA, the same FBI. And until those agencies coordinate each other, I mean, you've been in law enforcement. If you don't speak to each other, if one has specific information and doesn't give the other, I mean, it's a classic bureaucratic mess. Until that happens, I think we got the same government. I think that Ronald Reagan incarnated could come back and have the same problem for a while with this government until they organize themselves in a manner that's sensible. The problem with Obama is he knows it doesn't work, but he wants to grow it. That's what I don't understand. You got a situation that doesn't work, but you want more of it. I don't quite understand the logic there.
He has fallen way short between what he said and what he's done.
Right.
I mean, way short.
Right. I think Bush had a risk of making it a religious war. It is a religious war in Iraq against Al-Qaeda and the Muslim extremists, because it's our religion against theirs. Bush said he prays to his God every night to give him direction on what to do. Bin Laden's praying to Allah every night to give him direction on what to do, and we're over fighting a religious war. This Muslim, this Nigerian bomber, was on his website. He said he was frustrated, with his religion and not being able to get women, so he wanted the 72 virgins.
Right.
I mean, and then you worry about homegrown terrorists. How do you have homegrown terrorists in America? But thank goodness the women in America are promiscuous, so our women are our first line of defense. Thank you, ladies.
and then you fall back to this issue at Fort Hood with on a military base,
sure,
full of soldiers. Nobody's allowed to have a gun.
Right.
Okay, except the civilian police. Now, How much sense does that make?
Doesn't make much sense at all. And all the signs were there too with this guy. He was communicating with the same cleric, I believe, that this Muslim Nigerian bomber was, who has indoctrinated him into thinking he can do this. He yells, God is great, Allah is great before he kills people. He's on this list, doesn't want to go back to Iraq. In my view, it's all the signs are there, but in reality, the FBI is probably still looking for a motive. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. I don't understand it. So they're afraid to take on religion, and they're afraid to point to the obvious on situations like this.
Ron Hart, we'll be right back.